Well, good evening, and welcome to the Psych Coffee Shop. I'm Aeson Knight, and of course, with me is the Techy the most, Techy Joe. How are you, darling?
I'm doing good. How are you this evening?
Halfway evil, totally mad, and possibly in a mood to play. Hello,
And
Miss Brenda. Welcome to the table.
hi, Brenda. So yeah.
So, yeah. So, do you want to take the disheartening news first, or do we want to talk about the other censorship going on?
Oh, as in the one I just started dropping f bombs over.
Yes.
Oh, so tech news. Norton LifeLock to buy Avast for as much as 8.6 billion. Giving them access to the giant base of Avast customers. Yeah, I'm a little ticked.
Right.
That's not two companies I really want to see merged together, mostly because Avast has always been my recommended free option for antivirus. You know, if you can endure the nag screen, because it does get a little naggy. It's
Right.
not that expensive to buy a license, or hasn't been. Norton, of course, is. I know you hate it,
Oh, I will not have it on a computer.
right?
Ever.
I'm okay with it mostly for corporate clients. It's very corporate oriented.
It's
Um,
not secure, it's not safe. They
well,
have been proven time and time again to have more holes in their security than the Swiss bank has gold that doesn't belong to them.
they've been known for being very slow to respond and very deaf sometimes on reports.
Hmm.
Like they've had multiple instances of that. That's fair.
Right.
But again, they're kind of working within that corporate structure.
Hmm.
Mostly because of their pricing. They primarily deal in corporate, just because it's easier to justify the corporate licenses and the cost, versus a home consumer and those costs.
Right.
That also leads to some problems with when you're primarily corporate based. You're going to more so see things that hit corporate users and less likely to see more of the home user
Hmm.
issues. So,
I'm still very happy with Windows Defender that's now called Windows something another.
oh, they changed the name on that?
Yeah,
Really?
Windows Security.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Love it, love it. I'm very happy with it. Cost me nothing. Stays the hell out of my way. Doesn't slow down my machine, and doesn't redirect me to other sites to pay money to.
Which is fair. Microsoft keeps making the promise that Windows Defender / Windows Security is good enough, and I think for a lot of users, it's probably good enough. As long as you can follow some general basics of online safety,
Hmm.
as long as you don't need, information
Hmm.
as to whether the sites you're going to are secure or not. Like if you're really tech savvy, you really are internet savvy, Windows Defender can be good enough.
Right.
That's pretty much where I live on that. But yeah, it's I have trouble trusting Microsoft though. I really do. Just because within their own software product line, Windows primarily, they fail to fix a lot of things, and they tend to be a little dismissive of problems until they're splashed across the front page of newspapers. I
Yeah,
don't know that they're
but
doing this. Pardon?
but they've not been hacked. Their security software have not installed viruses on your system when you uninstall them. That
Fair.
has been proven that Norton does.
Now I did not know that on Norton. I do know that Norton used to have problems with its quarantine when you uninstall.
No.
As yeah,
Yeah. No. They have, if you uninstall or cancel your subscription to Norton, it has been proven in court that they make your system vulnerable for attack and then also release viruses. It's just like AOL. AOL will eventually kill your computer.
Okay. Well, again, hadn't caught that one. Generally, try to stay out of Norton for most of my users. Um, I do have a couple of users that are diehard Norton users.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to pay for that subscription eternally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as long as they're paying for it. Like, that's the thing that kind of resonates with what you're saying. As long as you're paying for it, it can be okay coverage. It's not always the best for home users. It's
I think it's
really,
quite
really
dangerous for corporate users.
okay.
Like, I'll guarantee you every case of ransomware we have had was probably secured by Norton.
More than likely, given that ransomware did start typically appearing more in the home user space first, um, back in its very early days, before someone got smart and went, "Hey, go hold all those corporate customers hostage."
Mm-hmm.
Like, duh, get your money. Because it was kind of a play off of some of the phone call solicitations, or the phone call scams, more importantly,
Right.
of, hi, this is Microsoft, there's a problem with your computer, blah, 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 you know, that whole thing. And then, oh, yeah, we'll take care of that for like $1,000. And then they empty your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Shannon.
And when Norton purchased LifeLock, that just upped their scam filter.
Well, that was probably the biggest tipping point for me on not really being able to recommend, well, partially on not really being able to recommend Norton
Mm-hmm.
at all. Now, backing up, generally I wouldn't recommend Norton to home users. But yeah, the LifeLock edition and all that crap, yeah, that's like no.
Yeah.
I've seen it through working with clients. It's become a real giant money hog.
Yeah.
Is what it's become.
Right.
It is very expensive. It typically includes a lot. It has a lot of features.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them are really clear how to use. Most home users, for the most part, don't need them.
Mm-hmm.
It's very connected to backups. I know there are home consumers that are very big on the LifeLock concept, and so the 2-in-1 is great for them, because they're getting antivirus and they're getting a service they were going to pay for separately. But I'm still going,
Yeah. Scam. LifeLock has always been a scam. Will continue to be a scam.
Yeah, LifeLock's crap.
Yeah.
Like, pointing out that the overzealous LifeLock owner did all these advertisements with his social security number because they were foolproof, and then had to get a new social security number.
Yes. Not only that, but the system in itself is not proactive. It does not prevent identity theft. It doesn't do anything for you except take your money.
Right. Well, it has a lot of really good marketing. But no, it's fundamentally a reactive system.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't really do much more than what you can already do through the credit bureaus.
Right.
And like, hi, go over to Credit Karma.
Yeah.
Just basic 101, go to Credit Karma.
Right.
You can look at your own credit report. Generally, like, they really overstate how much they're doing to protect your identity.
Yeah. Because they're
Or
protecting.
moreover, to protect your credit report from identity fraud.
Right.
Like, I'm sure they have probably caught a few things.
Mm-hmm.
But considering that in a lot of cases, identity fraud starts locally, as in typically it's your data shared locally.
Right.
As in someone has physical access to your home or at least your home office. You know, that's usually where a lot of this starts.
Right.
Now, if you are vulnerable or you're dealing with someone who is vulnerable to, like, hi, I'm from Microsoft, there's a problem with your computer, then it may help a little. But even
The
that
only thing
is,
you can do is the only thing it does is freeze your credit, and you can do that yourself with three
yeah.
simple phone calls. All right, so got two questions here. Let's take on those.
All right, Christina 92285 is I've been dealing with another female, or did the people that told me that just want to make me doubt him and start drama?
Well, let's take a look and see. And I am enjoying this new camera angle. Well, I'm going to say it this way. You already know what's going on. They're looking to offload problems and situations. And you're sat over here trying to figure out what to do, guys. They're trying to start drama hunting. I would kindly and very nicely kick them out of your relationship. Not Ivan. Ivan's doing fine. But these people are loving to have drama around and loving to cause you problems. So whoever's telling you that is bullshit. All right. So let's take on Saggy Star.
Swaggy Star 51390. The guy interested in me still hasn't come forward and instead is keeping an eye on me on social media. What's going on with him? When will he open up to me?
Okay. Ooh, very interesting. All right. So first up, we have the Page of Wands here, showing off that he's doing more than scoping out your social media. He's watching your reactions to things. He's seeing what you're interested in. He's trying to learn you. I feel like that he will do very much a traditional introduction and traditional move forward to connect with you. And also, I feel like you're probably looking at it a month with the Magician here showing the full cycle. So this relationship will form. It'll grow pretty well. But the problem with it is I think he's got to get his guts together and be able to pull that off. Okay. So next up out of the gate, more techie news. You shared the story about Apple and their new parenting program.
Yeah, this is not a fun one. So Apple is getting ready to scan US iPhones for images of child sex abuse. And that title alone, my first reaction was, okay, this has got to be clickbait. This has got to be more to it. It's got to be more nuanced. No, actually, it's not. So effectively, they will be going through U.S. customer iCloud accounts, um, then doing a check of the images in those accounts, um, for their connection to known child pornography images through the hash of the images. And then they will be checking on device itself, before it stores in iCloud, like going forward.
Right.
So basically, if you're sending and receiving child pornography, yeah, that's going to be checked. There's a lot of concerns with this, because what they're effectively going to do is, after a certain number of matches, they are going to send that to the national. What is that? I always get it wrong. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and then lock down your account so you can't use your phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of concerns on that one. We're not pro child pornography by any stretch, More so, the unfortunate ability, if you are stuck in a false positive situation, you're guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah. And I'm very much anti-child pornography. However, I'm going to get a little annoyed when and I think it's going to get very annoying when you have grandma of a set of twins getting a knock on the door from DEA to bust her for child porn.
Well, now the theory should go. This is checking hash against known child pornography, which is typically child pornography that's already in the wild, that has already been caught in other situations,
Mm-hmm.
in which someone else has already been busted for this image, and it is known to be of a child.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, while there's it's considered not highly likely for there to be false positives in this. I think it's like a 1 in 4 trillion. I'm double checking that now. That you would get two hashes that match, that are of different images. Trying to look real quick. I know I saw it in this article. Oh, I guess it was further up. Less than 1 in 1 trillion chance
Uh-huh.
of improperly flagging an account.
Right. Then you go on down
Mm-hmm.
and it goes into their new monitoring system where it talks about it affecting possibly GLBT youth that are in danger. Um, you know, because it's going to start, if they receive a message, they're going to start sending it to the parents.
Well, and that's on accounts marked as a child, and that's receiving any explicit images.
Yeah.
Um, that it will, one, warn the user that you've received an explicit image. Two, it will allow you to open it, but it will then send it to the parent.
Right. And I can just
Um,
see this being misused by every stalking girlfriend out there.
mhm. That's basically where, but moreover, and Brenda makes the point, and searching my phone basically without a warrant.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's not your phone according to Apple, it's Apple's phone.
Yeah, that's always the fun with Apple. Apple essentially has kept saying you don't actually own the thing you bought. You own a license to use it,
Right.
which is a weird concept. Like, I can't understand the idea that I would ever own a license to use my microwave,
Mm-hmm.
or I would own a license to use, a cigarette lighter, or I would own a license to use
Mm-hmm.
anything, but software,
Right.
which understandably is licensed under that kind of scenario.
Right.
Well, like
Very much
leasing a
so.
car, not even. I don't even think it's like leasing a car, because at least with leasing a car, you have options at the end, but moreover, that car retains value.
Right.
Um, and it's not that iPhones don't, or any other Apple product. It's not that they don't. It's just kind of weird in that regard. Um, but yeah, you could draw the analogy, I think. Oh
Right.
yeah, the whole Apple thing. It's the bigger concern is that this will lead to others.
Yeah.
That this whole theory will become more commonplace. That we'll start seeing this out of Google. We will start seeing this out of Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
through, I would assume, through like your Google Drive, your OneDrive with Microsoft. It's insane.
Yeah. Um, again, I think we in this country need to get some privacy laws and some ownership of our privacy. What I do on my computer or my cell phone is nobody else's business.
Right. And
Out of warrant
fundamentally,
signed by a federal judge, stay the fuck out of my stuff.
mhm. Well, but fundamentally, that's already been argued as you can already, in many instances, use someone's browsing history as evidence, say, in a murder case. Like if their spouse gets poisoned and they've been researching poison,
Mm-hmm.
that's often considered, evidence of a crime.
Well, they should have
Um,
just took my Wicca 101 class and we would have took care of that.
well, fair. Of course, then again, do you really want to make you taking that class evidence of intent to commit a crime?
Oh, I'd love to put a federal judge through my classes.
Oh, that could get fun.
But see, this opens up an even larger problem. And this
Okay.
is where the problem gets into, and people aren't thinking about it.
All right.
Brenda calls me for a reading on an Apple phone, and let's say she chooses a text based reading. So we're going to text on the Apple phone
Mm-hmm.
to her Apple phone. That is supposed to be a private conversation 1-to-1
Mm-hmm.
by federal law. Like, I'm not even allowed to keep notes on the call by federal FCC laws. Well, Apple's now going to be recording that information.
Well, I think the argument there is there's a limited expectation of privacy because already in the transfer of the message. Now, technically, Apple is supposed to be doing end-to-end encryption on your
Right.
message. Whereas not every cellular carrier doing a text message is handling it with the same level of security.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. This is a large, and this is why they're only doing it in the US, people. Britain, they can't get away with this. Germany, they can't get away with this. Only in the US are they allowed to get away with this.
I was thinking they said there were other countries they were doing this in or had already done this in. Okay, I must have read that on something else.
Right.
But yeah, there's been a general expectation this is going to lead to more companies being asked to do the same or similar. But it also opens up a lot more of how much are your how much privacy can we hold on to when our storage, one, is not in our control, and two, if companies are going to continue to be able to get away with this idea that you don't own your device, which is already a big enough problem with right to repair, but that you don't own your device, then the reality is like that's where I start arguing it's like a lease because it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that if you lease a car,
Mm-hmm.
you know, even if they come pick up the car,
Mm-hmm.
the contents are still yours.
Exactly.
Versus, and I'm talking about non-payment or whatever, you own those contents, but ultimately Apple's treating it like, no, we own the contents as well,
Right.
which gets into some nastier issues in terms of things like copyright.
Right.
Because ultimately, if you're saying you one, have a right to scan that device, and two, you have a right to deny me access to it if you don't, if what you find violates a terms and condition, like that's probably the best way to say it right now. It's going to be a term and condition you have to agree to in the next update that whatever, that we're going to scan this and do this and blah, blah, blah. That you're going to deny me access to the device and thereby the contents. Like that's pretty much like picking up my leased vehicle and then saying, no, you can't get your Britney Spears CDs out of it, and you can't get your child's asthma inhaler or their car seat, or you can't get your work laptop. No one can. Except for law enforcement, we'll give it to them to prosecute you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wait a minute.
All right.
Like that would be what I would expect with a police impound.
Mm-hmm.
If for cause you think, like, effectively you have Apple acting as an extension of the police.
Right. And they cannot do that under federal law. So I think this is going to be very interesting to see if they can get it through the courts.
Right. And Alexandria says it should be like getting pulled over. You need to do something illegal before being pulled over. Fundamentally, what Apple's arguing is that it has a right, that ultimately it's working like a sobriety checkpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And that, no, fundamentally, we can set up a checkpoint. We've told you there's a checkpoint. And as you go through it, you don't really have any more rights than to not be drunk.
Right.
Or otherwise impaired when you go through that checkpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do the illegal thing.
Mm-hmm. But again, I think this is ridiculous. I think this is going to enable more control. I think this is going to enable more supervision. I think this is going to be a shit show and a half, and I think it's going to ruin Apple iPhone users. They're going to turn away from them.
Yeah. Although it's going to be really hard for people to say this is why they left Apple. Because on one hand, is the very logical argument that what Apple is doing is, yay, you're going to catch child predators. But you're going to do this by getting rid of all privacy.
Right.
And acting as an extension of law enforcement.
Right.
But you're going to have people that go, so you're pro, pedophiles. And it's like, that is not what this is about. This is how it's being rolled out. But its effect is far more reaching.
Right. And Brenda says, if Apple gets away with it, then the others will follow. I debate that. Google has been very, very, very pro-privacy.
They very much tried to be.
Right.
I mean, if I remember right, Google's had some issues over the years, but they've tended to, once those are pointed out, go more towards privacy.
Right.
As in, they're not, quite as like, hi, we're trying to intentionally hand over your stuff to law enforcement, and we're actively working as an extension of law enforcement. Because I don't know how else you read that.
No.
Like, if someone else wants to argue it, I'm good with that, and I would love to hear the opposing opinion. But I think the only argument you can make is, yes, that's what they're doing, but, think of the children.
Right.
And
well,
it's like, I'm...
the CDT Security and Surveillance Project, Greg Najin, co-director of it, said Apple is replacing its industry standard of end-to-end encrypted messaging system with an infrastructure for surveillance and censorship, which will be vulnerable to abuse and scope creep into not only the U.S., but around the world.
Yeah.
His direct quote to this: Apple should abandon these changes and restore its users' faith in security and integrity of their data on the Apple devices and services.
Yeah.
What I find more so scary here, and what has been occurring and has occurred multiple times with Apple's security breaches, I mean, I don't understand why anyone that of high profile of anything has an Apple phone. Ever.
And if you're not clear on why it's called the fappening, you can, or I believe it was the fappening. Yes, the fappening. That happened a few years back, in which a lot of very sensitive photos were released of celebrities.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know why you would do that either.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those that gets me though, because there are going to be so many people
Mm-hmm.
that are going to go, okay, well, you're, encouraging the spread of child pornography. And I'm just going, I'm sure there's many things that do that already. Kodak did that for many years with Polaroid.
Mm-hmm.
Does that inherently mean that you can already use your phone to sell drugs if you want to? It's an illegal act, but
Mm-hmm.
every drug dealer has a cell phone.
Multiples more.
Before cell phones, they had pagers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where you have to strike a balance between protecting people and simultaneously protecting people.
Right.
That on the one hand, yes, you would probably begin catching more people sharing child pornography, catching more of them. On the other hand, you're going to violate a lot of people's privacy to find those people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want to do it that way? Is the fundamental question.
Right. And you have to look at the costs, and you have to look at that this is a corporation acting as a governmental entity.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it goes back to the cases of, the federal government paying employees, tech repair employees, to run a specific software looking for child pornography and report that to them. And we've discussed that on here, and I've gone with it's kind of the same theory. I shouldn't be recruited, nor should I be acting as um, an extension of law enforcement when you bring your computer in for repair.
Right.
Like, if you're here for me to fix, my computer won't turn on. Nowhere in that did you give me permission to go through all your files, even if
Mm-hmm.
it is with federal software. You didn't give me that.
Right.
You authorized me to fix your computer and to fix the problem that you brought it to me for, not authorized me to act as a, agent of the government. It doesn't mean if child pornography is your background desktop, I'm not
Right.
going to see that and make my own choices. But
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean I should be going through your computer looking for it.
Exactly. Furthermore, and this is something that, in my opinion, you have no reason to be in personal documents unless you're cross-checking them with the computer to make sure they copied.
Right. And I have to also, while I'm doing that, respect people
Right.
and their privacy, and know that, yes, when you handed over your computer, you probably handed me a whole lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And, I try my very level best. If
Mm-hmm.
I have to check files, to try to check things that would otherwise seem innocuous.
Right.
Like, I'm not opening the photo that says, hysterectomy scar.
Right.
I'm not opening the document that says, all the 1,000 horrible things I think about my boss and how to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm looking at file names going, okay, that seems innocuous. That seems like, Christmas 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that seems like it would be safe. You know, those are like, that's a photo I would open to make sure that everything copied properly.
Right.
Or if I'm having to check documents, I'm going to look for something that is, again, you know, um, essay paper, something simple,
Right.
nothing too over the top. Church newsletter,
Mm-hmm.
like that's what I aim for.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's move into something a little bit more. So apparently, salmon prices are going to skyrocket, y'all.
Hmm.
Tens of thousands of salmon died in the Arctic chlorine leak.
Yeah, I'm a little slightly confused on this one. So this was in Norway. Thousands of gallons of chlorine leaked into a fjord in the Atlantic Ocean.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like this is chlorine tanks that are commonly used between breeding cycles
Right.
to reset the salmon farm. It sounds very much like this was way more chlorine than they typically dump for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets a little weird. Like, it wasn't just an accident, like, oops, we didn't mean to do that, as in they had control over it and someone made a mistake, as much as it sounds like they have an actual tank leak.
Yeah. This is a tank leak. What I find interesting is they point out no employees or other people were harmed by the leak. How do you know that? This is open water that you have in a tank that is contained within a waterway that you use to capture and breed fish.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know where that water went to with 4,000 gallons of liquid chlorine.
Right. Although I would think their bigger concern would be the immediate area and the employees that work there or the people that are immediately in that area. Because
Right,
that would be your strongest, exposure.
right,
Now, downstream effects and what it's going to do in the larger area that it was dispersed in, that if you take their comments in those terms, that may be a little, more than they meant to comment on.
right. And then, the seafood company has said that it will address the financial consequences at a later time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, look for salmon to be high priced. I'm hoping Norway does not see massive reactions to this chlorine
Right.
because while it dissipates quickly into things, chlorine is a deadly chemical. It has continued to be a deadly chemical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that is also where it's important to point out that, on the upside immediate, no employees were injured who would be in the immediate area.
Right.
Again, having that highest exposure in the immediate.
Right.
And again, what it's going to do to the surrounding area has yet to be seen. And I'm sure there is going to be some fines and penalties for that.
Right.
Because that's very much like the effects that we've seen from oil spills and areas being, decimated,
Mm-hmm.
at least for a few cycles.
Right. If not major ones.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we already have other shortages going on in this country, and this is in Norway. And all y'all will probably think, well, it's in Norway. How's it going? Salmon has to come from Norway or Alaska. It's going to greatly affect us.
Mm-hmm. Well, farm raised, yes.
Yes.
This is your immediate market.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these fish are grown for sale.
Right.
Like they're raised, they're stocked, they're raised, they're fed. These are not wild by any stretch. Little tanky fish
Right.
that are intended to go to market for food product.
Hmm. So salmon cakes may become rare for a while.
Depending upon how much of an area ends up being affected, because again, there's a possibility that if there are other farms in the area, more fish could end up being affected.
Hmm.
Additionally, this isn't, I am not well versed on salmon farming, but I assume that it takes at least a year.
Yeah.
Judging by like the fact that salmon have an annual spawning cycle.
Right.
So I would say that this much loss would have at least a 1 year effect, and that's assuming that in the immediate they can pretty much instantaneously go back in and start over.
Right. And I don't think they'll be able to. I really do not think of it because I'm thinking of like our little 20-gallon tank in there. We mess the chlorine up. That's a 30-day reset at minimum. I mean, we haven't been able to reset because the levels haven't gotten back to normal.
Right. And granted, that's with tap water,
Hmm.
and that's a much diluted level of chlorine.
Right. Well, we hope it is. I mean, it's West Virginia and we live in Oak Hill. Who knows about that one?
Well, there's that.
All right. So, speaking of living in West Virginia, Republicans reaping the biggest redistricting edge in decades. Fresh off the sweeping electoral victories of a decade ago, Republican politicals used the census data to draw voting districts to give them a greater political advantages in more states than either party had in the past 50 years, according to the Associated Press analyst.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so here's the bigger problem. West Virginia's losing 2 seats. Oh, well, losing 1 seat. I think they'll end up losing 2 seats once we look at everything. And this could be a problem for the Republicans.
Well, it's the only seat they're known to be losing.
Mm-hmm.
As in terms of the next election and any change to the makeup of the House
Mm-hmm.
or of Congress. Um, the both remaining seats are favored to be retained by Republicans. For West Virginia, so it is the only seat they're losing. It's not necessarily going to hurt them if everything else stays the same.
Right.
Because it's a total seat loss. Like, not only are they losing a Republican, they're losing the entire seat.
Right.
So,
They're losing the entire seat. What's even more troublesome is they can be losing, like, the redistricting of the seats could outweigh their Democratic balance. So, therefore, what they had tried to accomplish was separating the Democrats could pull them together. West Virginia is also losing one of its presidential electoral college votes.
mm-hmm.
So, we will have less impact in the presidential election.
Well, we weren't really a make it or break it state before.
No.
Like, unfortunately, we've not been a make it or break it state.
Right.
So, granted, overall, it's unlikely to have a massive effect.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it does a lot against West Virginia itself.
Right.
Because fundamentally, we are now down one seat. And so when we're talking about West Virginia and things that influence West Virginia, affect West Virginia, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
there's one less voice there.
Yep.
Not that the three voices that have been there have been all that great at actually paying attention to what West Virginia needs.
or once.
Or
Maybe
once.
he's a ridiculous one. He can go ahead and leave Washington now. He can go back
Well,
to making his bread.
there you go. So, yeah. Meanwhile, in West Virginia, and the reason we lost this seat is because we were the only state, I do believe, where there was both a decline in birth rate and death.
Right.
And fewer people moving in than moving out.
Yep. Now, granted, Florida, North Carolina. Let me see. It was just here listed again to go. Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina will be getting more seats. And Texas.
Well, yeehaw.
Yeah.
So, how many of those are West Virginia residents, would you want to bet? Or
most.
former West Virginia residents? Because the long-term joke for North Carolina was it was as far as you could get on a tank of gas.
They need a better car because we can get further than that.
Hey, no, well, fuel mileage improved.
Uh-huh.
I'm talking about early 2000s, or late 90s, early 2000s. That was the joke, as far as you can get on a tank of gas.
Not really. I mean, because the 98 Buick, I can go all the way to Florida on a tank of gas. But it's been a while.
How big was that tank?
15 gallon.
Oh, no, I don't think you're going to go all the way through Florida.
To Florida. There's a lovely, lovely little holdover there.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. But, anyhow.
Well, Alexandria used to live in North Carolina and actually dreamt last night they moved back there.
Sounds like you might want to, depending on how their government gets restructured.
Oh.
See, she went all the way down there from Massachusetts.
All righty.
See, interstate miles, you get much better gas mileage. That's why you keep pitching at me over the gas mileage. I don't know interstate.
I don't know what you're like. I swear to God, you jump out of the car, leave it running, and go shopping.
Only on Tuesdays when I have passengers.
I do. I get back in my car, like I'll be driving around, like doing my thing, and I come in and my gas mileage is at like 31. And then he takes the car out and I get back in it and I'm driving down the road and I'm like, that's really low miles to go. What's my gas mileage? And I click it and it's like 22. And I'm like, man, well, that's why the miles to go is so low. Like it'll creep up while I'm driving, which is even more confusing.
Yeah. But see, the thing though over there remember is who does all the little pity shopping?
Fair.
Who does all the country road driving?
Yeah, it's a little equal.
Yeah, but I do take her for hikes.
Well, there's that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Today I went a whole 50 miles an hour. She was a little upset.
Ooh, you got it up to 50, did you?
Well, since someone accuses me of being the speed demon.
Oh, my goodness.
But, go ahead and tell them what you discovered about her tonight.
Okay, I'm just gonna lay this out there. So we had a little incident this evening with friends of ours that they had a flat tire, and I knew my vehicle had like this tire repair kit. It does not have a spare. Now, if y'all remember back about a week or so ago, we had a flat tire. Um, I remember buying the car and being told about the tire repair kit. And all I heard was, you have roadside assistance, so why are you listening? That was inside my own head. Like, I don't need to know this. I have roadside assistance. I've decided I've hit an age and a point in my life where I just want roadside assistance. I don't want to change tire. Not going to do it. I can. I don't want to. That's where I'm at. And so I didn't really listen or pay attention while the salesman was going over my roadside emergency procedures and what all equipment I had. So we have this flat tire. He gets stuck for hours waiting on a tow truck that actually didn't show up till the next morning from a different tow company. It was a whole ordeal. Meanwhile, we've already talked about the fix-a-flat, and I'm not a fan of fix-a-flat. Like, if we had had a spare tire and you want to change a spare tire, you go change a spare tire. I don't use fix-a-flat. Like, it's just, if you have to, you have to. But if you don't have to, please don't, is where I'm at with fix-a-flat. Because I've always understood it to be really bad for the wheels. I could be wrong. But anyway, we have roadside. He called roadside. We did the roadside thing. It was a nightmare, but okay, that's what we had. So, flash back forward to tonight. And, our friends have a flat. They go, hey, I heard something about you have fix a flat, from that whole incident. And I'm like, oh, yeah, if you want to use it, go right ahead. I'm never going to. So we pull out the weirdest canister any of us have ever seen, and trying to figure out like how this is supposed to get used. Well, lo and behold, it requires the air compressor. And it talks about it on the side of this canister, because this is factory equipment. It talks about this canister as like standard equipment for my car. This air compressor. And I'm going, what air compressor? And so I start looking through, and all of a sudden I find it. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I think I do remember him saying something about because my car has three
cigarette lighters.
That's what I know them as. They're something else, but anyway, cigarette lighters. The little DC ports. It has three of them, and the one is in the trunk. And I remembered him saying something about, yeah, that's really great for hooking up the air compressor. And I'm like, oops.
Moral to the story: auto buying has now become my domain.
No, listening as they go through equipment I don't think I'm going to use became your domain.
Auto buying has become my domain.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, because I want a Max 2.
Well, you go get you a Max 2, but you're not buying me a car. Like, I'm not going to be like, here's my car, go trade it in on something and surprise me.
Well, your sentence is wrong in two statements there.
Oh, okay.
Statement one, you never trade in a car.
Okay.
Ever, 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 ever do not trade in a car.
Okay.
Statement two, surprise you? No, honey. We are going to have maps on the walls. We're going to have, if we're paying cash for a vehicle, I want it under warranty. I want to know exactly what the common value of it is, what its major problems are, before we even go buy the sucker.
I checked Consumer Reports. I found out before I even thought about buying it that it had low total cost of ownership. I did all the right things. I paid for roadside assistance.
Uh-huh.
Because that was a choice I had already made.
Uh-huh. Well, that's not a choice you made. That's a choice that, Rebecca made for you.
Well, I would have separately gotten roadside assistance. There was at one point with that vehicle, I had 2 different roadside assistance programs.
Uh-huh.
Actually, 3.
Well, technically, you have 2 currently.
Well, I briefly had 3, though.
And we may have 3 still.
Okay.
Our account has roadside assistance on it.
Okay.
Your account has roadside assistance on it. I believe the business account has roadside assistance on it, and our insurance company has roadside assistance on it.
Oh, well, fun.
And I'll have to check Discover, but it may have roadside assistance on it.
Well, possibly. So, yeah, I was roadside assistance to hell. Why do I need to change a damn tire? Well, that's where I'm at. I'm like, but no, at one point there was also roadside assistance through AARP. There was also an included, like, I forget, it was in the bonuses of buying the car at the dealership. They included like a year or whatever of roadside assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, if I get down to the point I have to use that, I'm really screwed.
I don't know. I was at the point of starting to call the other ones and see if they were able to locate me on a map.
You know, the funny part is they're probably all offered through the same company.
I know.
And
it's
not going to be AAA.
Roadside assistance.
But it's not going to be AAA, and you know that.
No.
Like, no. No.
Which, if AAA improves its benefits, I may go and buy it.
I never had a... Well, no, I can't say that. Never mind. I was going to, like, sing the praises of AAA for a hot minute. And there was a hot minute. I dearly loved AAA, and then they left me on the side of the road. In a snowstorm.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for you to justify why I don't have my tent in the back of the car.
There's no room.
That's debatable since there's not a spare. There is now room there.
Well, if you take out the styrofoam blocks.
Hi, Mary.
I don't know. You might find room to get a tent in there. I'm just saying, I don't think it'll hold a tent.
I don't need the 8-man.
Well, I know you don't need an 8-man. But what are you going to do with a tent in the car?
So when I get another flat in the national forest, I can stay with the vehicle.
Fair enough.
Since West Virginia, and the woman was really confused by this, and she confused me more when she said, "Let me arrange for your Lyft driver to pick you up."
Yeah.
Now spell the name of the town you're in again. Thurman National Forest.
Like, good luck finding that one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. Now with AAA, I will say that is a little reminiscent of the AAA experience. And in the middle of this blizzard, they could not find a local tow truck driver, and this is to Princeton. Said the words when I finally called back to find out why I had not seen a tow truck driver, and I was standing in the cold. That they dispatched one from Roanoke because they're really close on the map.
Mm-hmm.
And I just died at that point. I was like, in a blizzard, they're not? They're not even close to each other in like a perfect sunny day. That's a long drive. And in a blizzard?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God. Oh, and that tow truck driver was so mad when he got there. And I still, that was one of the last times I changed a tire. This is why I don't like changing tires.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the tow truck driver pulled my car out of the ditch, he forgot to take it out of gear. and it busted one of my tires. So we got my car out of the ditch. I drove like a block with the steering wheel the whole other way before I could pull off into a parking lot and change a tire.
Mm-hmm.
So I was already cold, freezing, had been waiting 4 hours for a tow truck in a blizzard, and then had to get back out of the vehicle and change a tire.
Okay.
Oh, I had gold AAA at the time.
Well,
But yeah, the discounts can definitely be worth it, though. I will say that.
yeah. Well,
AARP is the same way. And side note, spoiler
just don't
thing,
buy their life insurance.
yeah. But with AARP, side note, you don't have to be 55 and older to have them.
No.
You really don't. They'll let you sign up.
Mm-hmm.
Just know your money is going to legislation and programs and anything else that supports people over 55.
Right. And, they have been. I'm very much against AARP in general because, in general, they really back a majority billing against me in multiple directions.
Fair, but they have some decent discounts.
But at the same time,
Oh, I know.
they sell shit products to senior population.
It can get exploitive, yes.
Yes. Well, I'm kind of a little relieved and a little upset at the same time. Everyone last year, including me, was very happy with former Governor Cuomo, who has now resigned,
Mm-hmm.
as he should have.
Yeah.
But comparatively, very upset with him and his behaviors.
Yeah.
And it's bad. It's bad when this was our best example of a president.
Well, potential future president.
Well, not only potential future, he was acting as president during a national emergency because our freaking current president at the time was fucking useless hiding in a bunker.
Right. Definitely was a model governor for COVID-19.
Right.
Was very much modeling presidential behavior regarding COVID-19. And I think on Cuomo, you're gonna have to just sluice it into buckets.
Yeah.
And go, these are the things he did exceptionally well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the garbage bin.
Right.
To kind of have any kind of conversation about him.
Mm-hmm.
From now on.
Right.
Is that he did many horrible things and he got a few things really, really fucking right.
Right. Now, what we do know is his replacement is making history as the first female governor of the great state of New York. And that's a very much step up. So that'll be interesting. There are still charges pending. There's criminal investigations pending. There's probably going to be civil cases pending on at least one, if not more, of the sexual harassment crimes that he made.
Mm-hmm. Without necessarily digging into all the problems related to Cuomo exactly, it's just really sad.
Yeah.
Like point blank, it's really sad when you see someone who succeeds so well on something so serious,
Mm-hmm.
then turn around and get charged with the things that he's been charged with.
Right.
That it's like, it's not the not that it was ever right, but it's like, it's not the 1950s.
Right.
it's not like we're sitting here, 60 years later looking at his behavior and going, well, he did some really great things, and also for his time, he did some really bad things that were generally accepted.
Right.
No, this is recent.
Yeah.
This is like no new, this isn't a historical lens to look through and be like, well,
Right. This
like,
isn't
no,
even
it's
a
not that.
decade old.
How did you ever think this was, one, not going to come out, and two, that it was ever appropriate?
Right.
Hmm? Mary brings up JFK was a womanizer during his political career. And he was.
JFK was a whore. Let's call it as it is. He was a whore. Not only during his political career, but during his life.
Yeah. At the same time, though, you can put a little historical lens on that and go, it was also more acceptable for him during that time. This wasn't necessarily a career assassinating life choice.
Right. But
Would be now, is now, but at the time, not really an issue.
Right.
And it is why we can look at JFK, for example, and take the things that he did that are good,
Right.
and then we do have to throw a great big asterisk there and go, but there's some other things you need to know.
Right. Now, Roberta Kemplin,
Mm-hmm.
known for the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, both were Hollywood women fighting against sexual harassment, resigned under fire Monday for advising Andrew Cuomo's administration behind the scenes in efforts to discredit one of Cuomo's accusers.
Oh, that's probably the sickest part of the story.
Yes.
Oh. That just took it from bad to sleazy, sleazy, sleazy worse.
Right.
Ugh. And especially, why would you? That would be that's like if, someone from HRC gets hired on, how to craft legislation to deny gay rights.
Yeah.
Why? Why would you, as part of HRC, show up and do that? Why would you think it's a good idea? How good could the money have been? How good could the money be?
Right.
Why would you do it?
Yeah. It's one of those that's like, no.
Because ultimately, it's going to come out, and this is exactly how everyone's going to react to it, is that there's no good version of that.
Right.
Horrible soundbite. No one's going to take this well.
Right.
Even if you poorly advised him on how to do it, no one's going to take this well. But
yeah, and it's like, really, you've made so many grounds on other things, and you burn your case up, your cause up for this. This is just terrible. It's ridiculous. And I think the behavior's even more so aggravating. Moving on to other aggravating news.
Mm-hmm.
Morgantown sandwich shop owner charged in Capitol riot assault to be released on bond. How is this business still even open? Is my first question.
Well, unfortunately, welcome to West Virginia. If you didn't notice, we went, 70% Republican in the election, and that was for Trump.
You're right. But that's still in question on whether it would have been that high with the redistricting.
Fair. But that still means there can be a more than fair number of people supporting his business.
Yeah.
Like, just out of, like, he could be serving shit on a literal shingle, and they would support his business.
Right.
Because association.
Right. But the Sandwich U in Morgantown, Tantino is the person. Apparently, he can be released on bail. Again, and I'm really questioning because in April it was termed that the police officer had suffered a heart attack, suffered a stroke, and died from natural causes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah. It doesn't change the fact.
Scary level of coincidence.
Right.
But even if that's true, the fact, like, what he did was show up to this event. Like, okay, let's take the Republican narrative that this was an event not unlike people touring, the building. He showed up with, I believe it was pepper spray, chemical sprays at least.
Yeah.
And they were only for self-protection. Apparently a large quantity of them. And this is what this officer was sprayed with before his death by natural causes. I think you're still in that situation putting a lot of stress on a human body.
Right.
When you have a crap ton of people spraying chemical sprays at you. I could potentially see where the medical examiner is going, well, fundamentally, this is what happened.
Right.
And trying to necessarily, like, bend it as to this was directly caused by. I could see a medical examiner there. I like that it would, you could argue this one.
Right.
Like, you could successfully argue this one was not, directly related. That this officer had a pre-existing problem, and maybe this contributed, but not necessarily caused.
Right.
Like, very careful wording. Like, just as much as if the officer had, run up 10 flights of stairs, he might have also had the same effect.
Well, I don't know. Being sprayed with chemical agents is debatable. Not only that, but the stress of trying to put off a mob.
Right, and Brenda's right there with what I'm saying. It may be natural cause, but was brought on by the circumstances. And I think that's where that medical examiner is. But across the board, there's still an assault that occurred. And even if you take off the, resulting in someone's death, even if you can sit there and go, well, that's not exactly what happened. Even if this guy, like, this is the flimsiest fucking thing I've ever seen. That you showed up to the Capitol, not with like one or two, but a ton of these, and then you just didn't have any control over who got a hold of them, and you just didn't know that would happen, and like, oh, come on.
Exactly.
Come on.
Furthermore, I'm sorry, he should be charged with treason. Why are they not charging these people with treason?
Well, moreover, who the hell goes to tour a building with chemical sprays?
Right.
And feels they need that kind of protection. Not just like you had one clip to your belt.
Right.
Which, okay, I don't think typically they let you go through the building with that, but I could be wrong.
Right.
But again, who does that?
Right.
Like, again, just one, I would be like, okay. Two, maybe. I'd be like, okay, that's straining credulity, but okay. You had a ton of these.
Yeah.
What the hell else did you bring them for?
Right. And we're not talking the little ones that go to the keychain. No, no, no. We're talking about bear mace cans.
Yeah.
Sizes of hairspray cans.
Yeah.
Spray paint cans.
Yes.
I have some in the back, but I guess it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
This man should
huge.
be tried with treason. He should be treated as a treasonous, and he should not be released from jail to go run up to his greasy sandwich shop to run. And as a public, they ought to put him out of business. And the health department should send white gloves in there, and he should be put out of business.
I definitely cannot understand. Well, I do understand it, unfortunately, why he still has customers. I just, I hate that he still has customers, I guess is where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
That will keep that business afloat right now.
Right.
And and I'm sure these are customers that think they're being patriotic.
Mm-hmm.
Because they still think the event was patriotic.
Right. What I find interesting is New 5 in Morgantown called it a greasy spoon. It's a sandwich shop. There shouldn't be that much grease there.
Seriously. Like, alrighty.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So, got not so much good news from Russia.
who?
The Siberian wildfire is now largest than all the wildfires that are currently occurring in the world put together. The smoke from it alone is reaching the North Pole.
That's a lot of smoke.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of potential climate effects. As in
Yeah.
local, like, I don't even want to get into, like, climate denial and all of that. But, like,
They're
that's a
idiots.
lot of, like, micro changes or aggressive changes to our current, minute to minute weather.
Yeah.
Like, we've already seen that
Right.
happen with the storms out west,
Right.
or with the fires out west, creating storms. Like, we have that god awful rain and extreme heat
Mm-hmm.
hitting the Northeast.
Right. Well, and we got a storm system that was created in California by
Mm-hmm.
the Dixie wildflowers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mary points out, reminds me of the early 20th century Tunguska blast in Siberia. North Hemisphere shook.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then there's the long-term effects of Chernobyl alone.
Right.
Like, that had some ugly effects in the immediate.
Right.
That went not entirely global, but it's a lot of bad.
Yeah. So here's the thing: if Dixie is creating its own weather system
Mm-hmm.
that released rapid rain, it released damaging force storms, and the haze alone blocked the sun out.
Mm-hmm.
Then we add in the Siberian wildfires that is creating a cloud that's reaching the North Pole.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to see out of this? I mean, because if it's reaching the North Pole, it's going to create its own weather patterns. And if it's that large, it could be moving across the world.
Well, at least the weather effects, because
Yeah.
you are potentially pushing things around.
Right.
and changing like the genesis of storms
Right.
and how they would normally act, how they would normally move, what they would normally do.
Right.
So yeah, I would say it's going to be a very ugly effect.
Well, that's an ugly effect. And then we have um whatever it's unthawing. Like that's the other side of this is frozen tundra. We have already seen the Black Plague in the United States. We have already seen monkeypox in the United States. We have COVID making a rapid increase back to where we were a year ago. What other things can be released? What other things are frozen in that tundra? That's a big question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All not good. Not good, not good, not good at all. Now, I'm interested in Mary's comment here. Some people believe Chernobyl was a UFO blast.
Tunguska.
Yeah, Tunguska.
I'm making a guess on pronunciation.
Okay. What else?
Um, I don't know. Where are you at on UFO blasts?
I'm on the Scotty. Beam me up. There is no intelligent life force left here. That's where I'm at with it. What about you?
I don't know. I'm not prone to ruling things out entirely. I would call it more likely
Mm-hmm.
that this was a man-made event
Right.
than to necessarily want to jump to UFO.
Okay.
That's where I'm kind of at.
Well, where are you at UFOs?
I don't think they're impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, one, UFO in and of itself is unidentified flying object, so we don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're going, these are extraterrestrial beings operating a object, we don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't call it impossible, as much as I think probably over-reported. Um, I don't know. It just doesn't track for me
Mm-hmm.
that we would be under this level of visitation without a. I could understand if you have a couple of crash landings. I could understand if you're thinking that there have been, a few people assimilated. I could even understand if you think that, there's, some connection to ancient hieroglyphics around the world. I can follow that.
Okay.
I I would think we would probably have had more concrete evidence though to if at the level of visitation
Mm-hmm.
at the level of visitation that
Mm-hmm.
we have supposedly had and are currently having.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that we're not just talking about like Roswell, New Mexico, one event, one date, one government cover up. That would be an overwhelming amount of like cover up to do.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if people are commonly or commonly enough, encountering extraterrestrials for it to not have evidence attached
Mm-hmm.
that is more concrete.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, because I'm a one. I do believe that ancient aliens did exist, did visit the planet, and possibly were part of our DNA advancement. I agree with that part. Recent ones, I'm questioning.
Again, on the ancient form, I potentially.
Right.
Like I wouldn't rule that out inherently. And no, I'm not of the thought that we're the only intelligent life form in the known like all of space. I don't know that necessarily we're the only ones, and we might be the only ones in this galaxy. Just because the statistics on having a planet close enough to a star to hit the Goldilocks zone in which we have life as we know it. Granted, that's for carbon-based life forms, so could we have alternative life forms that are not carbon-based? Could you have a planet that has bacterial life, but not necessarily high intelligent life? Yeah, I could see that occurring. And I would generally assume, and again, it kind of goes hand in hand, if you're relatively close and you're intelligent, that you would at least want to reach out to your neighboring planets. Under the same theory that we can't be the only ones here.
Right.
Not necessarily in a aggressive manner.
Right.
Depending upon what's happening on other planets, the decay of stars, the potential that that's intelligent life form followed a similar, historical path that we did, and potentially damaged their own planet and would need to relocate. Those are all things I could see. I'm not there with the evidence on it.
Right.
That's where I get stuck. Is like I'm willing to believe.
Right.
I'm not necessarily at the Fox Mulder I believe, but I would be willing.
Well, I'm waiting to see some of the more information come out on about Mars, because there is a theory that the humanoids, at least one species of the humanoids, may have came from Mars when it was destroyed in a nuclear war. I find that somewhat credible.
Well, wouldn't that presuppose that either the life forms on the planet either are pretty much obviously not going to be carbon based, they have to be something else, or that the planet itself would have had to have been knocked out of, like, some horrific event would have had to have allowed the planet to move out of the Goldilocks zone. Like, so you're either a carbon-based life form on a planet that got knocked out of a Goldilocks zone orbit, or you pretty much have to not be a carbon-based life form.
Right. Well, if we saw anything, we can see that the orbit of a planet can be very altered from a nuclear disaster. We had one little nuclear blow up in Tokyo, and we were knocked 18 degrees out of our orbit.
So again, that's where I'm sitting with. It's not an impossibility, but then so starts the conversation. Was this an on-planet event, or was this a warring species / warring planets? Like, so one, you're not just starting with, okay, there was life on Mars, but then you're starting with, and then there was life somewhere else.
Right.
Because I would think that while you would potentially have the opportunity,
right,
in an on-planet event to have an explosion such that you push a planet so far out of that happy Goldilocks zone.
Well, this is
I think it would be harder than if your planet is under attack by another planet.
Right. Well, this is interesting. According to National Geographic Encyclopedia, Mars and Venus are both distance from the sun, in which water could have possibly been on the surface. So they technically would be in the Goldilocks zone.
Still, they're far out. Like, they're in the outer band, as I remember it. My science is a little rusty, but I think they're. I did not think they were in the Goldilocks zone. But if they are, they can't be by much.
Right.
Like, you're still looking, like, you would still have to look at this as like they still would have had to have had
right.
a pretty significant event, because I would look for them to be much closer to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily like, hi, we're gonna move together, guys. And like it was a billiard ball effect.
Right.
But that for the for them to technically be in a more like hospitable environment of the Goldilocks zone, that they would still have to be closer.
Right.
And
And the reason that Venus is not considered habitable is because of the carbon dioxide and other gases which have caused extreme greenhouse effects, heating the planet's surface to about 462 degrees Celsius or 864 degrees Fahrenheit. And then Mars does not have an atmosphere anymore.
right. And again, both could arguably have been related to some catastrophic event.
Mm-hmm.
But
So,
I still keep thinking they're not close enough.
yeah.
Like, I think if you're looking out into space for potentially Goldilocks zone planets, yeah, they're probably in that band.
Yeah, they
But
are
I
in the
still
band.
don't think they're necessarily close enough to get a second pass. Or they may get a second pass, but it's going to be like, the likelihood.
Right. Well, the problem with Mars is its atmosphere has been depleted. The problem with Venus is its carbon dioxide has been infused with other gases. But technically, all three planets are in the Goldilocks zone. What throws them out of the habitable is the liquid water, which scientists are now saying evaporated off of Mars because of its poor, and well, its poor atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So if we vacuum Venus and we dump it out on Mars, we should get an atmosphere that's habitable to Earth.
Well, I mean, that's presupposing a lot. Like, I don't think Hoover's going to be taking that one up anytime soon.
Well, we should be talking to Jeff Bezos about Shark and seeing if he'll, design a shark to go do that for us.
Why do you want a shark vacuum that looks like a dick?
Because then it could be taking on the atmospheric congestion, and then you wouldn't have to have a spacesuit on Mars.
Fair, but still.
But no, I think it'll be interesting once we get some rovers down there and start taking some real looks at what they're classifying as archive, of possible old structures, possible old river structures, waterways, dry creek banks. It'll be interesting.
Well, yeah, or it's going to be really disappointing. That's what I'm afraid of.
Right.
Is that there are a lot of people that spend a lot of time looking at these planets for any kind of sign that there has ever been anything ever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sets people up for potentially looking really hard to see something that might not be there.
Well, I think it may be interesting to one of these days when we do get people on Mars, which we should already have people on Mars, we should already have a moon base. If Reagan hadn't fucked it up behind Johnson, we would have. All right, so Mary's got a question. Let's take that, and then we'll wrap up.
Alrighty. So Mary, 11/28/57. I have a professional defamer, and I am not getting job interviews. Is it the vendor I worked with summer 2008 before our Seattle journey? Who can clear my name up with a certain big company headquartered in Armonk, New York?
I think the record speaks for itself. I think the only reason you're not getting job interviews, honey, is you haven't had contracts in a while. Like, I don't think it's someone talking bad about you. I just think that they're looking at you, and it would be like if I threw Joe back out into the tech world, looking at you and going, "What have you been doing for 10 years? Where you been?"
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then she has another comment down here.
Okay. Let's see. The Google Pine Bush, New York sightings. The Mid Hudson had a series of weird sightings in the early 1980s to date.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll look into that a little bit more. But no, I think that that's their response currently. That and companies don't know what they're doing tech based wise. They really do not. Are they going to have the in office, out of office, on top of office? They're still, trying to figure out where things are at and what to do. And that's the reason contracts aren't going through. You're not the only one into that.
Okay.
I still feel you get a contract here soon, though.
Okay. You checking up on Pine Bush?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. But we'll have to dig into that deeper because it looks like it's a lot more than just, a quick take.
Yeah.
So we'll revisit UFOs. Did Ashley get a question out? No, she didn't get a question out.
No, she just said hello. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
Sorry we didn't say hi. We had a few comments coming in.
Yeah. All right,
So,
guys. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. We will be back Friday.
mm-hmm.
Oh, one last question.
All righty. So Rana, I'm assuming if I got it wrong, I apologize. 11/11/2000.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering if I'll pass the audition that I just submitted.
Yes, but I want to tell you this project's going to be a lot of worry, stress, and aggravation. So question its value. The reason I say that is it shows you passing with the Three of Wands. But then right behind it, you've got the Nine of Swords, and then you get the Tower. So that's stress and aggravation. Because it is reversed, it's not showing a total tear apart. You're very welcome, darling. You're very welcome. All right, guys, you have an amazing evening. I hope you've enjoyed our show. See us Friday, where we'll be talking all things Mountain Bear. And of course, with our techies at the most. Speaking of which, take it off, Vanna.
All right, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda Bryant, Ashley Gish, Shannon C, Shannon D, and Lady Gwendolyn. We really do appreciate our baristas, our lovely Patreon supporters. We love you guys so much. If you'd like to learn more about the show or how to become a Patreon sponsor, please visit us at PCSPnetwork.com.
Yes, and just a small announcement at the end of the month. Well, two small announcements. One, Mountain Bears will be on the 26th instead of the 27th. And Barista Chat will be on the 30th, everyone. So go ahead and sign up now if you want to join us on our private Zoom chat where we get to talk about a lot of things that you guys bring up. Until then, we'll see you Friday. Good night, y'all. Safe travels. Wash your hands. Wear your masks. Because some places are now going back to require them, and it might be a good time to do that.
Absolutely.
All right. Until then, y'all. Good night.
Good night.
act. You can whisper behind my back. You can show me how the odds are up against me all day long. But I've been through the fire and come out alive, and there's no more fear in my eyes. Oh, now I'm rising, and you can't bring me down. You can't stop.